Good day and welcome to CDI Talks. My name is Anton Shekhovtsov and I'm the chair of the Center for Democratic Integrity, an Austria-based association that analyzes attempts of authoritarian regimes to influence politics and societies in Europe. In November this year, the European Commission recommended to the European Council to open accession negotiations with Ukraine and Moldova. Moreover, the Commission recommended to grant the status of an EU candidate country to Georgia. The Commission's decision on Moldova and Ukraine was somehow expected, as both countries were actively engaged in reform processes. In relation to Georgia, the Commission says that in recent months the country increased pace of reforms, but I think it's fair to say that it is the people, it is the Georgian civil society, rather than the government of the country, that are the real champions of Georgia's European integration. I was interested in discussing Georgia, the country's views on the Russian-Ukrainian war and the Russian influence in Georgia even before the Commission's decision. So I talked to Giorgi Butikashvili, an expert on Russian political warfare at the Free University of Tbilisi in Georgia. I hope you will find my conversation with Giorgi interesting, and if you do, please like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay updated on our future videos. Giorgi, thank you very much for this opportunity to talk to you about Georgia and what's happening in Georgia, around Georgia, especially in the context of the Russian aggression against Ukraine. You know, I've been to Tbilisi in May this year, and that was the time when Georgia, I think, allowed the first flight from Russia to Georgia, and there was a huge protest. By the building of the parliament, I guess, which I observed. And the mood in general in Georgia is quite striking in the sense that there is some sort of a contrast, a huge contrast between the actions of the government and the civil society and the population in general. In Georgia, I've seen a huge support for Ukraine. It's graffiti, it's Ukrainian flags everywhere. It's like in the Baltic states. This is what you have in the Baltics. And but then you have the government, which is, to say the least, is quite ambiguous on this whole issue of the Russian aggression against Ukraine and also aggression against Georgia. We should not forget that Russia occupies 20% of Georgia's sovereign territory. Can you at least start explaining what is going on in Georgia and why there is such a contrast?
Okay, thank you for having me here. Georgia is somehow separated. So there we have, like you said, the government who is playing somehow the Russian game, and civil society who is very pro-European and very active. The whole Georgian European ways now currently we can say that is standing on civil society activism and connection with the West. And that's why in March 2023 it became to this agent law that
foreign agent law,
yes, that the government sees until now, and so at the time as well, that civil society is so strong that they need something to do against that. Like in Russia in 2012 Putin did. And when we see in dynamic what was happening in Russia to state capture, how it functions and what was the role, we can observe the same thing in Georgia. It started in 2012, state capture process from Ibidina Ivanishvili, who is a Russian oligarch in Georgia. He is ethnically Georgian, but he's Russian oligarch. And at this point, from this time, the first period, first 4 years, it was somehow very in discord that the Georgian Dream will stay pro-Western and they want integration in EU and NATO, and with Georgia did visa liberalization, association agreement. So it was somehow everything functioning like we saw it in 2012 when we voted for him. But after 2020 elections, actually 2018, some researchers who are working on the topic of Russian hybrid warfare or in the security issues At that period, it was somehow already clear that they are not going to integrate in EU. They are using the narrative that it's okay, we are trying to become EU members, but EU does not want us. And it was all the time the repetition, the same narratives in the society. And now, after the war, after Europe somehow sees the geopolitics differently, and we got the opportunity to enter, to get the candidate status. The GD did everything to sabotage it, not to get the status. So it became clear for everyone, for international organizations, from the Western, for Georgians itself. But still, it is difficult to understand for most of people, not civil society. Civil society is active and they know everything, but the normal people in the grassroots level, in the villages, for them the propaganda, GD propaganda is working.
GD, you mean
Georgian Dream propaganda.
The ruling party.
Ruling party propaganda working, and they are spreading information that Georgia could be involved in the war. So the traumas we have from 2008 after the Russian aggression in Georgia, these traumas are still in the people. So the Georgian Dream started the campaign that Western countries, EU, want us to engage in the war. And at that point started in the society some fears. But still, the society, more than 80% want to integrate in the EU. Sometimes when we see the big picture, we want to zoom out the situation. It's completely absurd what we see in Georgia, because the GD, Georgian Dream, is trying to spread some absurd theories, some conspiracy theories. The civil society who are trying to help Georgia to get candidate status and giving everything, and the state government who was in the parliament who wanted they wanted to make this 12 points candidate status recommendation fulfill. They are fulfilling. They are saying that they are fulfilled it, but in the reality, it's only two recommendations fulfilled, what is nothing from 12. And the international community, like from EU and from the other countries, European countries, are trying to convince Georgian Dream to make this 12-point recommendations to get the status, candidate status. We are in the situation before the war. We were trying to speak with Europe. We want EU perspective. Now the European Union is asking us we should do our homework, and we will get it candidate status and further integration, start further integration process. So it is weird. The whole story is weird for Georgia, because the whole 30 years we saw the Shevardnadze, the first president of Georgia. He was not yet really a big European guy, the Western guy, but he started this process. Then after this was the Saakashvili with huge campaign, EU integration, NATO integration, and the whole period, 30 years, it was our goal to become the members. And now the situation, we finally arrived this open door, and we are standing there, and we can't go inside. We were invited, but we can't go. We won't go inside. Not we. The government does not want. That makes clear that the government is trying to play a Russian game, because Russia does not want Georgia in EU.
Here's a question. In your opinion, what is the root of this ambiguity in Georgia? Is it direct Russian influence, or is it the workings of the domestic business groups? You mentioned Ivanishvili, who has a huge influence, as far as I understand, in Georgia. So is it more of internal considerations, or the direct Russian influence on Georgia?
We see the direct influence in two different ways. One is the discourse and disinformation platforms. There we have, in Georgia, two governmental disinformation platforms in social media and Russian. And in different ways they are working together, helping each other to spread some disinformation on anti-president propaganda or some charge issues. They are interrelated. On discourse, they are same. Sometimes they are talking the same narratives, what was taught in Russia and in Georgian from political elite. It's completely same. And the other direction, now for 4 days ago, the US government sanctioned Otar Partsaladze, who was the general prosecutor in 14 years for GD, Georgian Dream, that he was working for FSP, and he got Russian passport, but he has also the Georgian passport, living in Georgia. So
is it legal in Georgia to have two passports?
No, it's not legal. It's only in special occasions. So this guy is directly linked to FSB, and he is directly being linked to Ivanishvili's government. So there's and this is not only one case. There are also the other cases. Actors from Russia spreading the same narratives. What is the government doing? What is the government trying to spread in Georgia?
You mentioned disinformation and social networks. Are we talking about Facebook, or there are some other?
Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all kind of social network are used.
It's interesting because Facebook is known that sometimes it takes down disinformation networks from Facebook. Was there any attempt to somehow try to contact Facebook and tell them that there is disinformation network?
Of course, we have very good organizations like Media Development Foundation, EastFed, and Atlantic Council who are working with Facebook together. They have the authentication with Facebook, and they are blocking the disinformation network as well and the content as well. So, but still they are refreshing every time. They're coming new pages. I tried to make some trainings for teachers in the regions, and I was shocked because this disinformation against Europe. It was something so absurd what they are spreading, but the people there, the teachers, the normal people, somehow they are not convinced, but they're doubting.
Several friends of mine and colleagues have for a very long time, they have been mentioning to me these Georgian far-right initiatives that are apparently being directly sponsored by the Russians, instigated, and I actually haven't heard of any authentic Georgian far-right initiatives before Russia started somehow instigating them. In Europe, every contact, almost every contact between Russia and Western far-right organizations and parties is being reported, and it damages quite heavily those far-right parties because of those connections. Sometimes, of course, like in Germany, for example, the Alternative for Germany, it gets away with its Russian connections, but this reporting about the Georgian far-right being connected to Russia, is it being reported?
Yeah, okay. In Georgia case is different case than in Europe or in Germany. The far-right in Georgia, before the war, it was these far-right groups and who had direct connections with Dugin.
Alexander Dugin, who is a Russian fascist ideologue.
Yes, and he was many times invited in their medias, in Facebook or in TVs. So GD, Georgian Dream, tried to make, there are the groups who are pro-Russians, and when you see them, we are pro-Europeans. So contrast should be created before the war. And this contrast created this far-right. There are groups, legitimate, that are pro-Russians, trying to make links with Russia because of Orthodox Church. And we are GD, Georgian Dream, more pro-Western or pro-Western party. So after the war, they are both talking the same. So the line between them it's narrowed. So the far right in Georgia is differently because they are trying to explain Georgians' conservatism somehow linked to Orthodox Church and Georgian identity. Because Georgian identity, if you're asking me, are you Georgian? Are you Orthodox? Yes, I will say. And same time, I'm Georgian. So Orthodox Church, Orthodox the religion and identity is mixed. And they are trying to convince the people. Western countries are trying to steal from us our identity, our religion and Georgian identity, and Russia, because Russia is Orthodox, and because we have them 200 years friendship, it's more close, and the LGBT topics they have, using there nicely. So somehow Holy Russia and LGBT Western countries. So these narratives are.
This is something that the Russians try to also use in Ukraine.
Yeah.
The same connection that you don't need to go to this gay Europa, to this gay Europe, and it's better to stay with the Russians, with the Orthodox and traditional family setup. This is basically the same textbook.
That's why the far rights are politically activating the issues which is pro-Georgian. Somehow, once Tugin said in the interview with them, Georgia should be not pro-Western or pro-Russia, Georgia should be pro-Georgian. This pro-Georgian narrative is somehow neutrality, say Georgian, and this pro-Georgian narrative is the main topic of this.
How do they justify or explain or whitewash the occupation of 20% of Georgia's sovereign territory?
Because Saakashvili was.
But do they blame Russia or do they blame Saakashvili?
They blame Russia, but they are. In the second sentence, they are saying it was provoked by Georgia because the Georgia wanted to go the way the Russia does not like, and we should not irritate Russia with our moves going to Western.
This is not very patriotic. I mean,
it's not patriotic. But if you are packing the frame that we are the Western countries are LGBT and we have here Holy Russia and that we are irritating Russia with some Christian country. Then comes this irrational that God is somehow trying to save us, save our identity, and that's why we should we can save it only with Russia. So when the irrational Christian ideology is included in the narratives, you lost the people, you are in the people's heart, because they are talking differently than the arguments are from some scientific or political elite should speak. Their texts, their narratives are more emotional based, and Georgians are very emotional, and the Russians know very well the ethnic psychology, and they're using that.
After the start of the full-blown invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, thousands of Russian citizens traveled to Georgia, and especially in autumn 2022 when they started this so-called partial mobilization. So thousands of Russian citizens are now in Georgia. What is your opinion? Would it somehow influence the pro-Russian cause, if we can talk about the pro-Russian cause of the government? Is it something happening already? So what's your take on this?
Okay, the Russians are everywhere in Tbilisi, not in Tbilisi, whole Georgia, especially in Batumi. Every fourth flat is bought by Russians.
Every third?
Every fourth.
A fourth?
In Batumi, in Black Sea region. More than 4,000 businesses already registered, Russian businesses. And in every corner you see the Russian cafes, restaurants, and they are working employer. They employ only our own people. So for the economic issues, Georgia is not getting so much the Georgians are not getting from them some benefits.
Well, they still pay taxes.
Yeah, they will stay, taxes. But in the long term, what you said, if they start living in Georgia, and in a long period, of course, it will be influence the political elite and political decisions in Georgia, because many of them are also the Georgians who lived in Russia, and they came back, and they can also afford the passport, Georgian passports, and Georgian passport. They are voters as well, to some extent, and the Georgians who lived in Russia and have some sentiments with Russia, of course and some businesses or families or no, they will also vote for the party who is more friendly with Russia. And businesses, our dependence from 2012 until 2023, our dependence on Russia is trade and etc. is growing very much. So we are now in the situation where Europe and whole Western countries are trying to move from Russian old businesses, and Georgia is trying to connect to make more business with Russia. It's about also flights and etc. Every kind of critiques towards the Russians will be answered from political elite that the people who are critical towards Russia, they are xenophobic, that they are fascists. So this same what Russia is doing, spreading in Russia or about Ukraine.
Some colleagues who are probably looking at the situation in Georgia quite in a very pessimistic way, are talking about Belarusization of Georgia. Georgia becoming some sort of Belarus, which is now quite firmly in the Russian sphere of influence, and almost one can say that there is no real distinction between Belarus and Russia. Is Georgia really going in this very concerning direction?
I can't say directly, but we are somehow on the way, maybe starting point, but everything depends on civil society, strong civil society, and the youth, the new generation. We have wonderful, very active, very European new generation who became more active after this agent law protests in Georgia. They saw that they can change some political decisions in Georgia, and they see themselves as part of Georgia, and Georgia is a part of Europe. So they will fight against Belarusization.
You mentioned that there is a way to defeat this Russian influence. One of the ways is to raise this new generation of Georgian civil society leaders. What other ways? Frankly saying, what recommendations could you give also to the EU, to Western partners, how this European integration can be boosted in Georgia? How to fight this Russian influence? How to fight anti-Western propaganda and disinformation?
The Western countries, Europe, is doing many things in Georgia against disinformation. We have many projects, but still, from the political elite from Europe, we need more loudly said that Georgia is a strategic partner of Europe. Now we are living in a situation that the government is activating some China strategies with China. The Russian has interest, and we need more loud support from Europe. And because the both actors, Russia, China, they are not playing the fair games, and somehow in this context, the voice of Europe sometimes disappears. That's why we need more loud Europe and more support towards civil society and towards the new generation, because they are allies of Europe in Georgia.
Thank you very much for this conversation, Georgi, and I really hope that the Georgian civil society will not allow Russia to turn Georgia away from Europe, from the West, where I'm sure Georgia belongs.
Thank you for the great questions, and I hope I answered your questions.
Thank you, Georgi.
Thank you.